my first question for you is, have you ever worshipped a demigod before? No? Okay. Do you want to just briefly share what did that look like for you?
There's a Shiva temple right by, well, I mean, it's like, where the Jagannath temple is in Mayapur. There's also Shiva there. And so on Shiva Ratri, we would do Abhishek.
Nice, yeah. Okay. Shivaratri Abhishek, yeah. Which is a common yearly, yeah. Shiva is kind of in his own category. So we can call him a demigod, but he's also his own tattva in a way. So, yeah.
I've chanted to Ganesh quite a bit in the past, just chanting alone.
And was there like an intention or purpose behind your chanting?
Well, a lot of times it was like to clear obstacles from my life.
Yeah.
Just praying for
clearing obstacles. Yeah. I think we can all relate to that. Wanting to clear a path. Yes. Mm-hmm. So sometimes, anybody else ever prayed or worshipped demigods? Specifically, I was thinking prior to coming to Krishna consciousness, like I forgot to mention that, but in the West, it's not very common, right? We don't even hear the term demigod worship very often in the West. So I was thinking one way that there's maybe a similarity is that we as citizens of the United States, we pay taxes every year. So we're not doing sacrifices to demigods, but we are donating to the government or the state or the city that cares for us as citizens, right? So in that way, I guess you can see some similarity of the intention behind sacrifice, which was to reciprocate with those who are caring for us, the demigods. And so we do that even if we don't always want to, right? There's a lot of grumbling and moaning around tax season. People don't want to pay taxes. I was actually appreciating the city of Gainesville after the hurricane. I don't know if all of you saw like the trucks coming out, clearing the trees and turning the power back on. And, at the parks, they go and clear the trails and stuff like that. So all of those things are funded by hopefully funded by taxes and other things. And of course, in the material world in Kali Yuga, things are not always so transparent, which is why people sometimes feel frustration with taxes. But that is one way that we can kind of, in the Western context, get an understanding of demigod worship. It's very similar in a way, okay? The demigods take care of us. We're going to give them their dues. We're going to reciprocate, thank them, and we're going to offer sacrifices, worship them with the expectation that they're going to continually give us the things that we want, right? We're going to have this homeostasis. Things are going to go well if we worship the demigods. In other cultures around the world as well, it wasn't just India where they worship demigods. They would also, what other cultures had the idea of demigods? Yeah.
I think of Native Americans, how they personified, or they had demigods for different personified. That's not like Western teaching, but they had like the sun god and gods of the winds.
Yeah.
And gods of the land, spirits of the land, things like that.
Yeah, and especially a lot regarding nature and earth, right? So the natives of any country really, they had that. Like we have to, because they're very land-based, right? So they're really aware of how important it is to have a healthy relationship with those who are caring for. They have gods, right? They think, okay, the god of the sun, the god of the rain, right? Because they were really aware of how important it was to get their rain and their sun and so on. And not too much, not too little. Yes.
The Romans.
Do you want to elaborate a little?
Well, yeah, they had a whole range of characters that are gods. So there's Zeus, there's Apollo, there's Mars, there's, I don't know, Athena, so many. Some rule over even things like dramas and art. Some rule over war, some love, so many.
Yeah. There's a similarity between Zeus and Indra, right? Quite a similar character. And and Thor. And Vayu, or was Thor? Oh yes, Thor and Zeus and Indra, right? Yes.
Government, and I was thinking about the White House, and I was thinking about the Olymp, the mountain where all the Greeks. Is that what you say? Olymp? We're saying Croatia. Olympus. Yeah, we say
yeah,
Olympus.
yeah.
So it's Olympus. I was thinking about Olympus because it's kind of similar structure. It's round.
Yeah.
So a Capitol building is like, you know, the gathering of the demigods of this earthly realm, and then you have Olympus in the Greek tradition, or Roman also. Actually, Romans, they kind of taken everything that Greek have honored, but in a different way. And then what I was thinking and what I want to contribute in addition is the pre-Christian Slavic tradition in Europe. There's a lot of, well, they don't call it demigods, but you know, call it gods, which it's demigods.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of similarities, like, you know, the thunder, the wind. There's one that's called Svevid. And Svevid is the figure with four heads.
4 heads.
Yeah, and there's a temple in one of the Croatian islands, and their sculpture was found, and it's 4 heads. And Svevid means one who sees everything.
Oh, wow, very interesting. Yeah.
It's a little meaning, seeing everything. And then there's a Perun. Actually, I grew up to the mountain. It's called Perun, and it's equivalent to Thor or Zeus, as a god of thunder. And then there's Perunica, which is his feminine consort. And there's a temple of Perunica right behind the mountain. And she was in charge of fertility and abundance. So yeah, many like that.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, so even in our recent Western history and current in Europe, places, there are still the not residual, but like sort of we see that has come down historically, that there has been some impact that the demigods have had on cultures across the world, and that people want to find someone to pray to or turn to, right? So let's see what the Srimad Bhagavatam says in this verse about demigods. And we'll see, we're going to talk today about why demigod worship, and then how do we compare that to what we do, which is Krishna worship, right? So how does that compare? What does that look like? So text 27. Okay? So I'm going to read the translation so you know what this verse means. Those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance worship the forefathers, other living beings, and the demigods. And okay, so let me go up again a little bit. Those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance worship those in the same category. Yeah, this one doesn't have that, but namely the forefathers, other living beings, and the demigods who are in charge of cosmic activities. For they are urged by a desire to be materially benefited with women, wealth, power, and progeny. Okay, so let's read the Sanskrit. Rajas tama prakritaya samashila bhajanti vai pitri bhuta pracheshadin Shri Aishwarya Prajeksava. So the first line, right? Raja, passion. Tama, ignorance. So, and then I want to point out the word samashila as well. It means of the same categories. So if we're in the modes of passion and ignorance, then we're going to gravitate towards those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance. The demigods, right? Those who are serving in those ways. So Rajastama Prakritaya Samashila Bhajanti Vai Pitri Bhuta Pracheshadin Shri Aishvarya Prajepsava. Please chant. Rajastama Prakritaya Samashila Bhajanti Vai Pitribhuta Pracheshadin Shri Aishvarya Prajepsavaha.
Rajastama Prakritaya Yamashila Bhajantiva
Thank you. So let's do the word for word together. And note, remember I mentioned Samashila. Sama and same are very similar words, right? So sama and then same comes from that Sanskrit root. So let's do the word for word together. Raja, the mode of passion. Tama, the mode of ignorance. Prakritaya, of that mentality. Samashila, of the same categories. Bhajanti, do worship. Vai, actually. Pitra, the forefathers. Bhuta, other living beings. Prajesha Adin, controllers of cosmic administration. Shriya, enrichment. Aishvarya, wealth and power. Praja, progeny. Ipsava, so desiring. So translation together. Those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance worship those in the same category, namely the forefathers, other living beings, and the demigods who are in charge of cosmic activities, for they are urged by a desire to be materially benefited with women, wealth, power, and progeny. Okay, purport. There is no need to worship demigods of whatsoever category if one is serious about going back to Godhead. In the Bhagavad Gita 7:20-23, it is clearly said that those who are mad after material enjoyment approach the different demigods for temporary benefits, which are meant for men with a poor fund of knowledge. So when you think of someone mad after something, think of cartoonish, right? Like someone frantically running towards something that they want. They're like so it's so obsessive in their mind, right? They become mad, like anything, like just get there, right? Just no more reason, right? That's sort of the definition of madness. So those who are mad after material enjoyment, they want it by hook or by crook. They approach the different demigods for temporary benefits, which are meant for men with a poor fund of knowledge. We should never desire to increase the depth of material enjoyment. Material enjoyment should be accepted only up to the point of the bare necessities of life. Do you remember that song in a Disney movie? The bare necessities. And not more or less than that. To accept more material enjoyment means to bind oneself more and more to the miseries of material existence. More wealth, more women, and false aristocracy are some of the demands of the materially disposed man, because he has no information of the benefit derived from Vishnu worship. By Vishnu worship, one can derive benefit in this life as well as in life after death. So that's also important to note. This life and the next life. So we don't have to suffer right now. It's like, yes, if you approach Krishna, you can still have a good life now and also in the future. By forgetting these principles, foolish people who are after more wealth, more wives, and more children worship various demigods. The aim of life is to end the miseries of life and not to increase them. For material enjoyment, there is no need to approach the demigods. The demigods are but servants of the Lord. As such, they are duty-bound to supply necessities of life in the form of water, light, air, etc. and then italicized. One should work hard and worship the Supreme Lord by the fruits of one's hard labor for existence, and that should be the motto of life. So it's kind of rare to find an italicized sentence in the Bhagavatam, in Prabhupada's purport, so we should note that one. One should be careful to execute occupational service with faith in God in the proper way, and that will lead one gradually on the progressive march back to Godhead. Lord Sri Krishna, when he was personally present at Rajadam, stopped the worship of the demigod Indra and advised the residents of Raja to worship by their business and to have faith in God. Worshipping the multi-demigods for material gain is practically a perversity of religion. This sort of religious activity has been condemned in the very beginning of the Bhagavatam as Kaitava Dharma. There is only one religion in the world to be followed by one and all, and that is the Bhagavat Dharma, or the religion which teaches one to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead and no one else. So pretty heavy, right? Heavy cutting words from Prabhupada in this purport. Practically a perversity of religion. Yikes. At the same time, in other places in scripture, we find that demigod worship is a legitimate, bona fide process. So Prabhupada is being very heavy to the point here that nothing can match service to Krishna. However, it's not that the whole process of demigod worship doesn't have its purpose. And so I'm curious, let's discuss this. Why is there this process of demigod worship in the scripture? Right? So one of the reasons we already mentioned earlier, which is to develop this mood of gratitude, to cultivate this this habit, regulated habit of giving back, thanking, offering back to those who have given to us, to create that mood. And it's a pious thing, right? If you think about our culture now, it's very much me-centered, typically. I want this, I want that, and I don't think so much about who gave me the things. Like if I go to, I was thinking of this recently because I was at a park and I realized that someone had blown all the leaves and removed all the branches after the storm. And I thought, oh, how many times do I come to this park and just take it for granted? I'm not necessarily thinking about the maintenance that goes into it. So it's easy in this world to get complacent and just get comfortable and think that the things that come to us are just, oh yeah, those are mine. I'm meant to have those, that entitled mood. So first of all, this process of demigod worship is designed in a way to cultivate that mood of appreciation for those who are caring for us. What are some other things that come to mind for you about why demigod worship is emphasized in the scripture? Yes, Gopal Prabhu.
I've heard it described that it can increase our faith because we worship the demigods and we get result. So it increases our faith. And then when we start to hear about Vishnu being higher or better, result or whatever, so we say, okay, I'll try it.
Yes, so it's helping on the faith building process. Yes, thank you.
It seems that on a positive of demigod worship that, yeah, you can help build faith. And when people are able to visualize like, oh, okay, this part of God is offering this, like if Ganesh is offering the ability to break through obstacles, it's easier for people perhaps at that level of consciousness to be able to worship something for something so specific, whereas Krishna is so omnipotent, so omniscient, so there's just this inconceivability to the vastness of Krishna, where demigods are a bit more grasped, it's easier to grasp. There's a singular path, you have a desire and you're practicing worship for this one thing that you want, perhaps that's not the ultimate. meeting you at that level to allow you to expand up to Vishnu worship.
Mm.
Up to Krishna worship.
Yeah, that's very insightful. The sometimes our brain just needs that. Like if we call a company, for example, right, and they have these numbers, hit number 1 for the call center, number 2 for this particular manager, this, right, like that. And so it does help the human being to be like, oh, there's just one demigod I can worship for obstacle removal, right? Let me go right to that, and it creates a simplified way of knowing who to talk to with their problems, right? Who to go to. So yeah, that's a really interesting point. I like that. Yes.
Vedas also speak about demigod worship because the whole Vedic system wants to make sure that there's a sliding scale, and wherever someone is, there's something for them to help. Because that wasn't there, people would actually, speaking of a sliding scale, they would just keep sliding down. It helps to keep them up. Those who are engaged in demigod worship, if that wasn't there for them,
Yeah.
who knows what kind of life they would be living.
That's, yeah, so you mentioned 2 points there. So the fact that the process is, it's there because there's an array of people, an array of types of living entities in this world. And some people need that demigod worship. They relate to it. They connect with that. So that sliding scale, an array of different ways of serving or connecting to Vedic scripture. And then the other point you mentioned is to help people go upward instead of sliding down. So the thing that in Bhagavad Gita, the thing that's mentioned, what's the most dangerous thing for the living entity? Animal life, right? To slide down from being a human where we have this, oh my gosh, we have so much potential. We have the opportunity to get out of this world. And then, oh, I'm just going to get comfy and act like an animal and then slide down back into animal life. So that's dangerous. And so demigod worship is one way to elevate the consciousness of the human to avoid that. Let me aspire to be like the demigods. And oftentimes those who worship the demigods also want to end up with the demigods after the end of their life. They want to go be with them. I want to be a demigod. I want to go to heaven, right? And the demigods, yes, go Prabhu.
Now, what you said is nice. I'm not trying to contradict, but chapter 7, verse 20 is mentioned in the purport.
Yeah.
Kamastaste Hurikyana Papachite Devita Tam Tam Niyama Masma Prakritya. Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations to worship according to their own nature.
Yes.
That was discussed in the purport also.
Exactly. Yeah, and that was actually one of the things I had under here about why demigod worship, because there are that verse is quite heavy from Bhagavad Gita. Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires. And before we heard the word mad, right? Mad for material desire. And in Bhagavad Gita it says, those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires. Surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. It's very tricky though, because these words sound very condemning, right? It sounds very heavy. However, at the same time, there are always going to be people who are materially oriented and they do need a process. And so Krishna is kind. He creates, here's a way to do it. Like you want to be in this world and you want to get comfortable and you're consumed with material desire. You want to get cozy here in the material world. Well, then at least instead of just getting cozy and going down, at least give back, be thankful, look upwards towards higher beings, right? Keep the consciousness at least a little bit elevated in the process. So yeah, thank you for highlighting that verse. Make the best use of a bad bargain, right? We've heard that expression. So if you just want to enjoy the material world, at least try to do it in a pious way. And that's why the Vedas have something for everyone, like you said, something for everyone. There was another thing mentioned in this verse that we are attracted to worshiping those who are of similar character, in a similar category to us. And there are demigods who represent the different modes of nature, right? There's some that are acting more in the mode of goodness. We hear Lord Brahma, right? Shiva, although we said he's in his own tattva, he's acting in the mode of passion, or well, he's actually the demigod of the mode of ignorance also. He cares for all the living entities who are in ignorance, and he destroys the universe at the end. And then who's in the middle? Who's the one in the, I mixed it up, sorry. So who's the one who's the creator that's in the mode of passion? Brahma, okay. And then who's the goodness in goodness? Vishnu. And of course, Vishnu, again, we consider him a demigod, but he's also incarnation of Krishna. Right? So, but yeah, so there's different types of personalities among the demigods that we might relate to, depending what mode we're interested in or gravitating towards. And Shiva is so compassionate that he has space for all of those living entities who are really quite, you could say, quite degraded or covered over, including like goblins and, right, like beings who are more subtle, who really like to hang out in that dark place. Right? So again, we see Krishna's compassion through the demigods. We see, oh, there's room for someone anywhere. There's room for everyone somewhere in this process. And we see in the pastime of Govardhan Puja, Indra got really angry when he wasn't being worshipped. And that demonstrates that he was taken over by this mode of passion, right? We get angry, our ego gets hurt, we get proud, right? Those are things that we saw in the pastime with Indra and Krishna. So another reason why there's demigod worship is that people like to have instant gratification. They want to have something fast. And there are two Sanskrit words. One is Shreyas and one is Preyas. Preyas means I get something now. I want something now, right? And I get it. I'm going to go for something, and it's usually something short-lived, right? Something now, like let me go to the store. Let me go to Dunkin' Donuts right there and get myself a bag of donuts, like instant gratification, right? I'm not saying that's what you guys do, but someone might think that, right? So let me go to the store and buy something store-bought, right? Store-bought cake or something. As opposed to Shreyas, which is something long-lasting, something that takes some effort to get to. It involves some austerity, some work to get to this goal, but it's a long-lasting, more fulfilling goal. So let me go every day to school, right? It's like, drudgery sometimes, hard. But with the purpose of getting something, a degree, and now this lasts my lifetime. Now I have this degree and I can use it in Krishna service for a career and so on. And that's a material example, but in the spiritual context, obviously it's even deeper. So Shreyas is, let me invest in something that's not just short-lived, but something where I get eternal happiness and it doesn't go away at the end of this life. It's with me always. So those who want instant gratification, they go to the demigods, because the demigods are in the mode of passion, generally speaking. Okay, give and take. Yep, I'll reciprocate and give you your comfy enjoyment. And those things end, though, right? So there was a time when I was little. I think I mentioned this before in class. I was a little kid, and my sister and I were outside playing, and it started to rain. And we had heard, of course, the story of Indra and the rain and all of that. And we thought, let's just see if Indra's real. Let's just see if he actually listens. Like, let's pray to him and see if the rain stops. So we said, please, we really want to play. It's like after school, we had our time outside to play. And so we prayed to Indra. Please, Indra, can you stop raining? You know, like we really want to have this time. And and not just that, but we're going to play about Krishna. We're going to play like stories about Krishna. So we're a little like, slightly manipulative here. So like a little guilt tripping, right? Because Indra, you're a devotee. We were like doing the whole thing. Indra, you're a devotee of Krishna. So don't you want us to play about Krishna? And we were doing that whole thing. So, and actually, so I remember this because the rain stopped, the clouds parted, the sun came out. It was like pretty phenomenal like response within a few minutes. It was quite drastic. And I remember because we were young, we were so excited. Wow, Indra's real and he listened to us, So sometimes the demigods can help us and other times they can't. Sometimes they respond, other times they don't. And sometimes they give us something and it lasts for a little while. Sometimes it only lasts for a short while, right? It's all this temporary thing. So maybe in that moment, the rain stopped and we felt like, okay, Indra listened. Other times we've seen, we offer, someone might say, oh, Indra, please stop the rain, or stop the hurricane, and the hurricane will continue, right? It's not necessarily guaranteed that they will reciprocate, especially with amateur prayers. It requires some depth, it requires sacrifice, and so on. So the thing is, and this is where the comparison comes in, right? I mentioned we're going to compare worshiping demigods or turning to demigods for help versus turning to Krishna for help. So if we turn to demigods, we'll get something, we'll get preya, right? Instant gratification, something short-lived, store-bought cake. The thing is that we don't know, we'll get something, we're guaranteed whether, okay, so sometimes we may not get our request, but it's guaranteed that if we do get it, it's going to be temporary, short-lived. The demigods give you a spouse. Okay, nice, you have a spouse, it's short-lived. They give you a car or wealth, or they remove material obstacles, short-lived. These things are not lasting, right? They're just, they might last maybe 70 years, but then they're gone. So, and even the demigods themselves, when they're in the heavenly planets, their lives are also short-lived there. Do you know what happens when they're getting close to leaving? Yeah. Oh, yes, Gopi?
They wear a garland, and when it's getting close to their time to leave, the flowers in the garland start kind of wilting, withering, falling off the garland.
Yeah, can you imagine you're a demigod, you look down, like, I don't have much time left, my flowers are wilting. It must be very shocking to them because they get so comfortable. You know how we get comfortable, especially in our 20s, I have to say, teenage, 20s, we think we're gonna live forever, right? You kind of get like, it's the best prime time of life, you're like strong, you're healthy. And then as you age, you're like, oh, sorry, these things start to change. It's like the garland wilting, uh-oh, you know? Yes, Kunti.
That's not too much to share, but I remember reading in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's really, really harsh. Actually, I was quite surprised reading this. I don't remember which canto, but in one of the purports, it was saying that the demigods at the end of their life, they just suddenly fall off the heavenly planets, and then they have to watch their partner get another partner as they're falling and getting eaten by what's between the heavenly planets and the earthly realms. It's quite morbid and scary.
Yeah, it's quite a fall from heaven, quite a shock, right? Can you imagine you have so much power and you can wield things and you can do things, and all of a sudden you fall off of that podium and you're back to tiny little helpless jiva, right? And so it's quite a shock. And so if we're thinking, okay, who am I going to go to with my desires that I want things that are long lasting, eternal. Am I going to go to one of those demigods whose garland's going to wilt? That's not a good idea, right? Because they're not going to be there. And it's like if you were calling in, we talked about calling in for a company, right? You have a complaint and you know that the person that you're going to be talking to doesn't really have the power to change it. They might say some nice words and they might be friendly to you on the phone, but they can't really help your problem. What do you say? Yes, can I speak to your manager, right? So that's the purpose of Krishna consciousness. We're going right to the manager. Let's go right to the source. Let's go to the one who's caring for all these demigods, whose garland never fades, right? Who's eternal, because he's the only one who can give us eternally lasting, deeply soul satisfying benefits. Yeah, you can say, can we escalate the case, right? And then with the hopes that it goes to the manager, right? And you can feel comfortable when you're complaining about something. You go, okay, finally I have the manager on the phone. Now my request is going to be taken seriously, and the person is really going to be able to help me because they have the power. The people who are just the clerks, they don't often have much power, right? They can do what they can do up to a point, and the same with the demigods. So let's contrast again. So we go to the demigods. There's no real guarantee. We may or may not, the rain may or may not stop. but it's going to be temporary, whatever it is. Then we go to, and it's not going to change. Oh, and the other thing is, it's not going to change the big picture of our life, right? We might get a car, but it's not going to change the problem of our life, which is we're stuck in this rotation in this world over and over, another life, where we're kind of trapped in this material existence. We can get comfortable, but we're not going to get out, right? So it's not going to change the big picture. Now, we go to Krishna, and Srimad Bhagavatam says that, right? That verse, it was mentioned also in the purport. Akama sarva kamova. So a person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of material desires, without any material desires, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the supreme whole, the personality of Godhead. So that's, again, we were talking about something for everyone. There's something for everyone in that verse. You can approach Krishna full of desire. You can approach him renounced. I don't have desire. Approach God. We can be somewhere in the middle. You can be wanting to get out of the world. It doesn't matter. Just approach Krishna. And that's the purpose of Bhagavatam, to remind us of that. Just go to the manager, right? Go to the top. So contrasting. So we go to Krishna, we get something eternal, something lasting. Now, here's the thing. We don't always get our prayers answered by Krishna either, right? So someone might say, well, we're contrasting here. So you said sometimes the demigods respond, sometimes they don't. So Krishna should always respond, right? But he doesn't either. So it's not, the guarantee is not in, oh, I went to Krishna with my desire for a better living situation and nothing changed. The difference between demigods and Krishna in this case is if I go to the demigods with that request, I end up with nothing. If I go to Krishna with that request, yes, maybe I didn't get the change in housing. However, I contacted Krishna. And that is completely transformative to the soul, right? So I went to Krishna with my mundane request, like Dhruva Maharaj went to Krishna. He wanted to get a better kingdom than his father. What did he say when he contacted Krishna? What was his realization? I wanted something and I got what instead? Yeah.
Searching for broken glass.
Yes. Yeah. So I was searching for broken pieces of glass and I came out at the end with a diamond. Like, what would you rather have? A diamond or broken pieces of glass like you find on the road, right? There's no comparison. They're completely different. So that's that's what happens when we turn to Krishna with our material desires. We may feel like if we're a little bit immature spiritually, we might feel disappointed. Oh, Krishna didn't answer my prayer. Is it really real? Right? But what we're not realizing is that the soul has come in contact with Krishna. And as we keep approaching Krishna with our desires, we keep turning to Krishna with whatever we have. We come at the end with something eternal. We're left with diamonds, right? Instead of broken pieces of glass. So quite a contrast of imagery. And then the other thing is that it changes the big picture completely. So turning to Krishna, temporarily, maybe our lives didn't change that much, but on a grand scale, we changed our trajectory completely. Instead of staying in this cycle, oh, another life, I gotta keep, trying to get comfortable here. It's like, no, let me get out. Let me get out of this calling, on the phone again, we're thinking about the company. Oh, I'm gonna transfer you, right? Transfer you. No, I just want to talk to the manager. I don't want to keep being transferred to the different people who can't really help me. And so that's our situation. When we turn to Krishna, suddenly there's a door, an exit from this whole thing. We're here, lifetime after lifetime of suffering. And here's an exit door. And that's the difference. And so when we think of it in that way, we realize, yes, demigod worship, it's a wonderful process for those who need it, for those who need help uplifting their consciousness so that they don't slide down into animal life. Right? It's there. Krishna's so kind, he gives something for everyone. So we're not denigrating it, we're not criticizing it. So there's room for that in this world. And actually it's better than our current me culture. But if we contrast that to Krishna consciousness, it's nothing in comparison, right? So we see that when we're approaching Krishna, we'll feel deeply satisfied on an eternal level. So I'll just reiterate what we shared. So why we worship, why is there demigod worship? We talked about many different reasons, right? Gratitude, reciprocation, uplifting our consciousness so we don't slide down to animal life. We talked about how there's space for everyone in a Vedic society. Okay, if you want to serve those who are like you, low to passion, ignorance, you can do that. We talked about how people want instant gratification. They want temporary gratification, even though they want it to be eternal, but really they're going after things that are temporary. And now contrasting that to Krishna, we hear in the Bhagavatam that everyone should approach Krishna no matter how many desires you have. And what's the result of that? What's going to happen when we approach Krishna? We go from this dutiful robotic process, demigod worship, it's kind of mercantile, right? I give you this, you give me that, to a relationship that takes on its own dimension. It's personal. It's not business-like. It's I'm turning to someone who there's a loving connection that can happen. It's completely different than the demigods. And it's something that will fulfill me eternally and deeply. One more thing I'll end with, and then I'll ask for questions or comments. So when Krishna was telling the residents of Vrindavan, don't worship Indra. He's duty bound to reciprocate with you anyway, right? He's commenting on this mercantile exchange. So you're doing your duties, the demigods are obliged to respond to you. They shower rain everywhere anyway, right? But turn and worship Govardhan Hill, who's the one who's maintaining you. So he didn't immediately say worship God, but later on in the pastime, he showed Govardhan Hill turned into who? Govardhan Hill turned into Krishna, right? And then everyone realized, oh, and of course, it's in Vrindavan, they always forget that Krishna's God. But in this moment, they realize, oh, the supreme personality of God is here. And so we're going with all of our rice and our sabjis and our cartloads of sweets, right? They're bringing all these gifts to the source. And then they're feeling deeply satisfied and really content. And not only that, but then when Indra had his temper tantrum, right? He threw his bolts and he was all angry and throwing, he created all these storms. Who did they have? Because they had turned to Krishna, they continued to have Krishna's shelter. And now we're all bundled under the hill together with Krishna. And how satisfying. And they were so deeply satisfied that time stopped still. And they felt like these 7 days turn into eternity. And they're just absorbing in the beauty of Krishna. And they're feeling completely sheltered and safe. And nothing else was needed. They felt content under the hill of this great mountain Govardhan. So that's how we will feel when we take shelter of Krishna. We will feel like that, the residents of Vrindavan under the hill of Giriraj, sheltered, cared for, and loved. So I'd like to ask for any comments or questions. Yes, Gopi?
Things. The first thing is just a funny thought. Advaita Prabhu is always making shirt ideas based on the classes. So I thought maybe you can make one that says Karens for Krishna. And then I'd like to go to the source. I'd like to speak to the manager, please. And then my other thought was just, okay, so we're saying that demigod worship is good because it can save you from going into animal life. However, I'm just thinking of the state of the world right now. You know, we can say many people in India, for example, are taking up demigod worship, but at the same time, year after year, there's less true vegetarians in India, for example. So are you really, like, maybe some of our other senior devotees can weigh in on this, but I feel like I don't think you're going to save yourself from animal life if you are worshiping the demigods, but you're actually living completely outside of any form of dharma related life.
Yeah.
So
I'm really glad you brought up that point. I was thinking about that too. You know, like Hiranyakashipu, he worshipped the demigods, but his intention behind that was very demoniac. Others as well. Vrikasura, right? He wanted to crack the head of Vishnu. He was worshipping demigods to get that benefit. So we find that, yes, the processes are laid out, but how we use them and what our intention is behind them can either take us further away or closer. And even Prabhupada said Kamsa was Krishna conscious, but Krishna conscious in the way that he was actually degrading himself further because he wanted to kill Krishna. Perverted, right? Perverted reflection. Yes, he's conscious of Krishna, always thinking, oh no, Krishna's going to get me first. I got to get Krishna, right? But the way in which he approached Krishna consciousness was opposite of what we're doing. And so again, in India, we see, like you're right, it's demigod worship often used to justify killing of animals. It's like all kinds of things like that. Very impious, very dark. And in those cases, yes, the soul can go down, they can slide down because they're using it for degradation rather than upliftment. And so it's how we use the tool is what we get from it. I'd like to hear if anyone has other thoughts on that or other thoughts in general. Yes, you had a point. What's your name? Jackson. Jackson? Jackson.
On your point, I was in the Houston Temple the other day, and they were talking about exactly that, and how Lord Buddha came and basically, like, 2,500 years ago, kind of set things right, got people onto that path of vegetarianism, and set the Dharma straight. And though he brought about many Mayavad philosophies, and that's where people were at the time, but he took the animal sacrifice away and was like, look, stop doing that. Like, follow the middle path.
Yeah.
There is suffering. There's a middle way. This is the way through. So it's kind of like here we are now, and we're slipping down the scale a bit. So we use someone to set things straight.
Yeah. That reminds me that it's so important to have authorities in our life, spiritual authorities. So if there is someone who's inclined to demigod worship, if they get the higher perspective of it, okay, you're worshiping demigods, fine. Just remember, who's the source of the demigods? And if they could put it into context for those people, here's the purpose to uplift you and so on, then they wouldn't be pulled down as much. They need guidance, right? But if you're just willy-nilly, oh, I'm going to do this because I feel like this is what to do, then we can often get strayed, right? You had another point there?
I had it's a tangent from this, but you mentioned prayer, but you mentioned amateur prayer, kind of discussion of prayer. I often feel, in my own experience of prayer, whenever there's a desire, whenever I want to ask for something specific, there's this great confusion that comes about, where I'm kind of bewildered by my own desire. I'm thinking of how could I ask? In the moment, there's kind of this desire to ask, and then this realization that nothing that I want, but I have no capacity to possibly ask Krishna. And I wonder if this comes from a place of like that sense of worthiness that is felt or guilt, but it's this like transcendental confusion. Is like I contact, and then there's this desire to ask, and then I kind of like fall apart into. And so I wonder just how you receive that and what your thoughts on that are.
Well, if you're falling, did you say you're falling into mercy?
It's like I kind of just fall into this fasting, like, oh wait, Krishna knows, I don't even know what to possibly ask.
Right.
It's just this like,
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head by saying, yes, we don't know what's best for us always, right? We think we might, oh, I'm going to ask for this to Krishna, but maybe it's not for our best interest. So by going to Krishna with any desire, even if we're confused, I'm not really sure what I want, or should I ask for that? It doesn't matter. Just go to Krishna, and Krishna will take care of dispensing what we need for his service. So we don't have to worry about how, and oftentimes when we don't get something, it's because Krishna's mercy. He protected us from something, right? So
that's a very
yeah. Yes, exactly. Receive the shelter. So we are over time, and I know there was other people with hands up, but maybe we'll do one more. Is it quick? Yeah, Advaita Guru or Max?
Thank you very much. I was thinking another reason, I should have said it earlier, but another reason why people, what was the question? Why
is there demigod worship available?
Yeah, another reason is that Krishna, or the supreme manager, the CEO, is never alone. So he's always accompanied with so many, and he has things in place, so the other personalities. So a reason could be also so we, us, regular mortals in this world, can develop some social skills. And recognizing things around us that are our immediate environment, not just outwardly, and developing that quality of being able to relate in relationships. And I think, 200 years ago, people were more pious, so they were recognizing, dependence on nature, dependence on rain and sun. But nowadays, like you said, in the day of convenience, I just go to Publix.
Yeah.
So it's like this vending machine mentality. I just put in 2 coins and I get what I want. Let's speak of Amazon, same day delivery. We're kind of desensitized from like having relationships. So Demigod or even the government that we pay for, but also our immediate environment, we can be personal and actually relate to them, how much we depend on. Because convenience is a piety killer. Like you lose your gratitude, you lose your sense of skill to relate, your social skill. Everything's so convenient, so I don't have to depend on you or you.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Yeah, and even when we're eating our food, right? Like we often forget all the people, or we don't often remember or think about the people who've grown the food and transported it and all these things, right, to get it to us. So yeah, cutting out the people at the convenience of expensive relationship. That's a really good point. So, and just one final thing I thought of is that there's a story, and it ties back to what Gopi was bringing up. There's a story in Bhagavatam where a demigod demonstrated she's actually a devotee of Krishna. Her name is Kali. Durga Devi. So Jadabharata was a devotee, and he was being, do you remember this pastime where Jadabharata was going to be offered up as an offering to the demigods, right? So you could think, oh, these guys are doing their duty. They're worshiping demigods. They're going to basically kill a person, right? And they're bringing this devotee of Krishna to Durga Devi. And so the deity of Durga, she actually manifested out of the deity, and she actually killed off all these supposed demigod worshippers, because there's an example of they went astray, they went wrong, they went off the path. And so in that story, she demonstrates, yes, I'm actually a devotee of Krishna, I'm protecting the devotees of Krishna. So we can remember that too, to realize all the demigods, even if they look dark and scary and they have their claws and their weapons, they are devotees of Krishna at the end of the day. Okay, so thank you for the very enlivening conversation, and I'm also available for a few minutes after if you have any questions. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.